Hi guys, it's Andy N. Thanks today for downloading or streaming yet another episode of Spoken Label. As you may or may not be aware, Spoken Label was started in the beginning of 2006 and currently we have well over 150 sessions recorded since then. Although you can find it on various networks, the full archive is available for streaming and downloading at Spoken Label bandcamp.com. It is a free download or free stream in there. But obviously, if you feel like chucking me a few pennies that way, it'd be eternally grateful to help me keep this podcast going and keep improving my equipment, etc. Enjoy. Speak to you soon. Bye bye. Spoken Label.
Guys, Andy N, Spoken Label, back in the house. I'm back on Zoom. And we're back to my second favourite country in the world today, actually. We're back over to Ireland. I've not spoken to a lovely Irish poet for ages. And the lady I've got with me today is, and this is through Beth Kenyon of Fly in the Wall Press, who's recommended this lady to me. And what Anne Walsh Donnelly doesn't realise is Bella's actually turned around and told me she's one of the funniest ladies she's ever spoke to. So I'm not quite sure what that means, like Anne is a stand-up comic or just a very, very good writer. But Anne, start with, seriously, would you like to introduce yourself to everybody? Tell them obviously what part of Ireland you're from and what started off your creativity, and we'll take it from there.
Great, thanks Andy for having me. Ireland's only the second favourite country. I thought that Ireland would be your most favourite country. I'm a bit upset about that now. But anyway, I'll forgive you this time. No, thanks, seriously. Thanks for having me. I'm originally from southeast of Ireland, but I'm living now in the west of Ireland in Mayo for the last 26 years. So that's where I'm living. I came here 26 years ago to work in a third level college, and didn't intend to stay long. And of course, then I met a man and fell in love and got married, and still here. Haven't got the man anymore, but
Oh dear.
still here with the two kids. The best part of the marriage is the two kids, so they're teenagers now.
I'm about to say, I know you've got a daughter, haven't you? So is it two daughters or is it one of each?
I have a son who's 19.
Ah, right.
The daughter is 16, going on 60.
Oh,
she's
blimey.
really the boss in the house, you know. So they're great. They're doing great. Just how did I start writing? I started writing 9 years ago now. Time is flying. It seems like yesterday. And I suppose it started off kind of a therapeutic thing, really. I was going through the separation, my marital separation. And it was actually my daughter that actually, I suppose, inspired me to start writing, because what happened was what age was she? 8 at the time, maybe? Around 8. Yeah, 8. And she when she used to write poems for people, like if she was sending a birthday card, say, for example, to her father, she'd write a little poem. It was beautiful. Like I have some beautiful poems that she's written me as well, with all that innocence of the child. You know what I mean? Like just, oh, gorgeous. So she was writing one, and actually was to her father. And there was someone else who had been in my life at the time, who was extremely supportive of me. And I wanted to give her something to thank her. And so anyway, I wrote her a poem, basically. And that's how it started. And it was just the process of writing the poem for me at the time, because what was happening was I was so stressed about the marriage breakup. I was waking up every morning at 5:30, couldn't get back to sleep. And I thought, well, look, I'm awake, I might as well write a poem. And that's basically what happened. Is I found I would start writing. And the time flew, of course, when you're doing something you enjoy. And it was just that process of actually putting words down on the page, playing around with them, trying to get the right word in the right order on the page. Just that. I just loved it. I just loved the, not just the venting of emotions and, oh, poor me. It was just more playing with the words and seeing how they looked on the page and how I could rearrange them, or, even like, did I pick the right word to express that emotion, So just the whole, I love the process, and that's how it started. And that was 9 years ago.
Wow.
And I'm still at it.
Did you find then when you started writing, was there any writers you really liked at the time? Or they'd all just come straight from the heart and it built something there, really?
Well, I have to confess, I started writing poetry and I hated poetry, absolutely hated poetry in school, hated it with a passion. Like, okay, the only poet I did like in school was Patrick Kavanagh. But apart from that, because in school, like, it's kind of like you're analysing it and you have to write an exam on it, and what's the imagery here, what's the poet trying to say, and I just hated it. So I didn't read poetry, till I was in my 40s, really. And then I started writing it. I said, well, geez, like, I'm writing it, so I better start reading poetry to see if I'm, if what I'm doing is anyway resembling a poem at all, because I was sure they weren't poems. I thought they're not really poems. This is my thing, like, for years. And so I just thought, okay, I have to read poems, because I'm not, if I want to learn how to write a poem, I should really be reading other poets' work to see. And then I spent years. I actually started writing poetry, and then I stopped because I thought I was useless at it, and I went on to write short stories. But I spent years trying to find poets that wrote like me, because I thought if I could find someone that wrote a bit like me, then I'd know I was writing poetry.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't think I was writing poetry. And then I did, about many years ago now, about 4 years ago, I did an online course, and someone on the course said to me, your poems are very like Billy Collins. And I had never heard of Billy Collins.
Not at that point, of course, yeah.
I was about poetry. So I Googled Billy Collins, and I thought, yeah, actually, and like he's like a brilliant poet, like,
Oh, yeah. He was American Poet Laureate for quite some time.
I thought, well, like, here's a guy that, like, is a really good poet. So if someone thinks I'm writing like him, I must be writing poetry. So I read a lot. I've discovered an awful lot of poets since then, and my taste changes an awful lot, because it's very funny. When I did start writing and reading poetry, it was very different than now. Mary Oliver, I couldn't stand her poetry when I started writing poetry. Sorry, now, don't kill me, but I love her now. Like, that's the thing, because I've changed myself. And her poetry is very spiritual, so it really speaks to me now. But like 4 years ago, I was like, oh, can't be dealing with that. So so my taste in poetry has changed over the years, and my own poetry has changed too. But yeah, I think kind of like it was only kind of 3-4 years ago when I started engaging with other poets and doing courses, that I actually thought, God, yeah, they are actually poems that I'm writing. It took me that long to kind of realize that these are actually poems, Anne, you're writing. Like, fair play to you.
That's brilliant. Brilliant.
Because, like, I was used to William Butler Yeats and all that, which is that brilliant. Like, but that wasn't like, like, I'm not a landscape type poet. Like, I do actually more so now write more about nature and landscapes. But like in the beginning, they weren't like that. They were all like really dark and gruesome.
I think you find that I've come across so many writers like that, and the start of sometimes I was like that. I've been writing since I was 10, really, or 11, and properly since I was 28, 29. And my very early adult pieces are incredibly miserable things. And you find out you're just so angry back then, weren't you? And I think it just changes over time sometimes, naturally. So, have you found out of yourself or your work over time? That's it. Do you think you calmed down a lot, or it just progressed, has it?
Oh yeah, like it's changed massively. Like, it's like someone said to me a couple of years back, a friend of mine, and she said to me, what you're doing is you're documenting your life in your poems. And I can, like, looking back now, I can see the development in it, in the work, both as a poet in terms of the art and the craft of it, but also in terms of what comes up in my poetry. And it's kind of funny because, like, the chapbook and the collection coming out in May are, for the most part, quite personal. But I have a new collection written now. It hasn't been gone anywhere. It hasn't gone to a publisher yet or anything. But it's written, and it's total fiction. There's not a bit of me in it. Well, maybe there is, but it's a character. It's total fiction. But it's like as if, and someone says to me before, sometimes you have to clear your throat, you know, so you have to get all the shite out and all the personal woe is me stuff out. And then you'll probably start writing actual real good work, you know.
Yeah, I think there is a cleansing mechanism straight away as well.
Yeah.
Definitely that.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a huge growth. Like at the beginning, it was a lot of dark stuff. And then the chapbook, the Woman with Now Tattoo, is it's totally like, it's all about my coming out journey. It's about my growth since my marriage ended, and then coming out as being gay in my 50s. So that's like, it's a very specific collection about a specific moment in my life.
Yeah, I get it completely. Shall we talk about your chapbook then, your debut chapbook then, before we come on to the forthcoming collection? I want to know all about this straight away. So, the woman with an owl tattoo. Now, first of all, who's the woman with the owl tattoo? Is that yourself, or is it somebody else?
Well, that's so funny, because when I launched the book here in Mayo, and apparently, now someone told me afterwards, but apparently at the launch, people were trying to figure out where my tattoo was. Literally, like, is it on her bum? Is it on her arm? I don't have a tattoo. Now, having said that, I did want to get one a couple of years back, but my kids wouldn't let me. So
I wasn't sure. In the house, like. I wasn't sure with the title on that, whether it's a spin on the girl with a dragon tattoo or something.
No, what happened was I wrote a story, or not wrote, I wrote a poem in the book, and in the poem in the book is about someone who has a dragon tattoo on their thing. Now, that's not me either, but when we were just trying to decide, myself and Isabel were trying to decide, well, what the cover was going to be like, what the title was going to be. And it was funny because we both wanted owl in some shape or form on the cover. And then we're kind of messing around with the idea of tattoo as well. And then we didn't want to go, do you know there's that book, what's it called? The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo.
Yeah.
Isn't there a book called that?
Yeah, there is, yeah.
So obviously we couldn't go with dragon tattoo then. We couldn't go with girl. So we just kind of, I don't know, we just came up with the Woman with an Owl tattoo, because that's so there's no woman with an owl. Actually, but having said that, there is a woman with an owl tattoo. I just discovered on Twitter a couple of weeks back. Would you believe this woman? I can't remember her name, but she's following me on Twitter. But she has a gorgeous tattoo on her arm. It's gorgeous, and I don't know how she came across me, but she's kind of like not mad, but she's writing the book, and she was going to use the Woman with an Owl tattoo as the name of her book, but she can't now because I've already taken it.
Oh, no way.
I can't remember her name, but if she's listening, she's a fabulous tattoo, because she got my book, and she had a photo on Instagram of her tattoo with the book. It's gorgeous. So so someone else has, but it's not me. Though I might still get one. Depends whenever the kids decide to let me have one.
Yeah, I mean, when you can get rid of them both easily, can't you? So then
get rid of them still, they're still
when they've both moved out, the night after the second one goes, straight out the tattooist survives you. Oh, brilliant! That's great. No, it's like, did you find an over? How did it compare then? Obviously, because we know we're talking about your new collection as well, odd as, and I'll let you go for that in a minute. But how did the writing process for both these chapbook and book compare?
Yeah, it was the chapbook. It was poems specifically written over a 2-year time span, and it was literally what was happening was, even though I didn't realize at the time, was that as I was processing something about being gay, I was writing the poems. You know, so like it was very much like writing the poems in the moment. You know, so it's kind of just that particular kind of two-year period. Whereas with Odd as f&ck, which is a full collection, 60-something poems in it, this is interesting because there's actually a poem in it, one of the first poems I wrote back in 2012. And it was maybe the second or third poem I wrote. It's actually about my mother, and she lost her parents as a teenager, and she was the oldest in a family of 6. So So that was one of the first poems I wrote, and that's actually in the new collection. So the poems range from, from the last 9 years. Most of them are probably written the last 4 to 5 years. But it was kind of, I just had some, I don't know, maybe 150 poems kind of lying around, and looking at them and seeing what could I do with them, and, could they form a collection and whatnot. So that they kind of just, it kind of went from, it's broader than the owl, and it's covering really, well, how do I describe it? It's hard to describe it. It's I suppose about pain and growth, and ultimately it's about, life is messy, but it's okay, and you can get through it. So there are some dark poems. There's some very funny poems. I have, my favorite part is the last 10 poems are just hilarious. They're tongue in cheek. It's me imagining different things speaking to me, like mouse or hedge or surfboard, or so yeah, I just kind of went mad with that, and just had fun, just kind of thinking of what maybe an eel might say to me, or a Ford Fiesta would say to me. So
nice, great. I think it's great idea.
Yeah, but like there's a message behind them, like on the surface it looks a bit mad, but there's actually kind of a deeper message going on there in those poems. So and I have poems about aging. I haven't got many poems about being gay in it, really, because I've kind of done that, in the owl. But yeah, and there's kind of poems about spirituality, my own journey in terms of my faith journey, and coming to know God, or whatever you want to call God, the divine, or the spirit, whatever phrase you want to use. Everybody uses something different, but coming to kind of know the higher power. So yeah, and there's a lot of loss and there's a lot of grief in it. There's a lot of poems about what I call inherited grief, and what I mean by that is about how the grief of others have affected me, particularly my mother's grief, and the fact that she lost her parents at a young age, and how that affected me, and like I never met her mother, obviously, and yet I feel this connection to her, and my mother's loss, it had impacted in my life hugely, and I didn't realize that till I started writing, how much it had impacted on my life. And not that it was ever intended, but it's just kind of, kind of growing up and seeing, I could see my mother's pain, she doesn't even know that, but it was just kind of, it was there in our house, even though it was just there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, completely.
So I have a lot of poems about that in the collection, my relationship with that, and other people's pain, other people that I'm close to who have suffered tremendous grief as well. I've actually dedicated the book to mothers who have lost children, and children who have lost mothers.
Great, yeah, great.
I know both, and I've seen the horrendous grief that losing a parent, and also the grief of a parent losing a child, how utterly devastating it is, and that has impacted a lot on me. So I have poems, about that loss, apart from my own loss as well, in terms of losing my marriage. But anyway,
completely. Yeah, you sound like you've covered a lot of ground with this, but it's all personal to yourself, and I think that's important as a writer anyway, because I think as a writer you've got to be honest with yourself. Even I think if you hide it, there's got to be something you can relate to, hasn't there? I think with it.
Yeah, like I kind of, some people kind of they kind of, I don't know what you say, they kind of not criticize, but they kind of maybe scorn this idea of confessional poetry. But I feel like, if you can write a poem, like my personal experiences or your personal experience, in a sense, we're not that very different. We all have the same experiences in one form or another. So the thing of poetry is if you can make your poem personal but universal, so that it's not all about, oh, poor me, but it's like someone else will read it and it'll resonate with them and they'll get something. So it's that thing about crafting your work so that other people can relate to it.
Yeah.
And even those who say, oh, you shouldn't be going on about your own problems or whatever else, or confessional poetry, I think even no matter what we write, we always bring something of ourselves, into the work anyway. You can't both not, so.
Yeah, no, I agree completely with you there on that one. So totally, like, I think it is, you automatically do, and I don't think you may not realise sometimes you're doing it, but there is got to be that sort of trigger there. Good luck with it, definitely. So now, I know obviously your book's due out on the 14th of May. Podcast, unfortunately, will be out a little bit later than that. But what plans do you have then in relation to a run-up? Have you got like a launch happening, have you? Or
yeah, well, it's very different than the last time,
Oh yeah, completely, yeah.
Yeah, like, and there's pros and cons to it. Like the last time, obviously, I had a physical launch, and that was wonderful. And like I'm lucky to I've had that experience of having a physical launch, because there's nothing. It's beautiful, like, to be in a room with your friends and do your thing and read your book and whatever else. But having said that, it's very stressful having a physical launch. It really is.
Oh yeah.
Nobody tells you that. Like, when you're writing and like, oh, I have a lovely book and I'm going to launch it and I'm going to be wonderful and blah, blah, blah. But nobody tells you about the fucking stress that's involved, because it's getting ready and then worrying in case nobody's going to turn up and nobody's going to buy your book.
Yeah.
So it's like having a party. It's actually like having a wedding, because all these things you have to think about. So in one sense, I'm kind of thinking, well, do you know what? It'll be less stressful because it's on Zoom. I don't have to have a room. Or to bring people or feed them, or what not, or worry about if anybody turns up or not, because it's
and I agree. I do. I've done live Zoom readings, hosted them, and been got guests myself, and it's just a different environment in it altogether. The commute home, like, the commute home's a bugger, mind you, isn't it?
In one way, it's less stressful. It's going to be less stressful in one way. And I'll enjoy it, but I think I would still miss that physical, that looking at the audience and seeing the reaction. It's not even actually looking, because you can look on Zoom, but you can actually feel when you're in a room with people. There's something, you can feel something you can actually feel it. It's not just, I can't describe it, but it's like you just play off the audience. If you get the audience with you and coming with you, and most times, like literary events, audiences are brilliant. But you just feed off that. It's an interaction, and you feed off the audience's how they're receiving the work. So I probably missed that part of it. I'm kind of thinking, I'm just depending on restrictions here in Ireland. I would love to have even one or two friends in the garden.
Oh no, it's just you just can't do
a barbecue. But I don't know. Like at the moment, that's not going to happen at the moment with the way things are here. But yeah, like it is what it is. Hopefully, at some stage, I might be able to have a physical launch. Next year, please God. But yeah, so we're going for a Zoom launch, and going to try and make it as fun as possible. And kind of myself and Isabel are throwing ideas around. We might kind of have little spot prizes, or maybe see if people can guess the poems I'm going to read and maybe get a prize. And I'm going to have this thing about, like, put up the table of contents and, like, tell me what poem you want me to read, and then the one that gets the most votes. It's a bit risky now that doing that, but it's just to have a bit of fucking fun, because like we have, like, Jesus, like we all need a laugh and we need fun. So I'm hopefully going to make it as fun as possible in the circumstances we're in. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Yeah.
No, definitely should be good fun. Wish you all the best of it. Now, you were hinting before, so I like to, as we get to the end of this now, I like to finish up with obviously asking writers what do they have planned next. But I know you've already got your next collection done, haven't you? So you've not submitted it round yet. So I don't want to give too much away in that yet. So we'll just be careful what we say there. But hopefully in a year or two's time, you'll have your next collection out. So is that a novel you've done this time, is it? Or is it?
I don't know what to call it, to be honest. It's I suppose the nearest thing I can say it's a novella in verse. So it wouldn't be full size. Like it could be, I don't know whether to call it a verse novella or a poetry collection. It'll be about the size of a poetry collection, but it's not. It's a story. I'm telling a story through. And actually, it's a hybrid. It's a mix of prose and poetry.
Oh.
So I'm telling, yeah, I love it. I really do love it, and I love how it looks on the page because it's. Do you know? I'll tell you what it's like. Have you ever read Max Porter's "Grief is a Thing with Feathers"?
No, I don't think I have actually.
It's a fabulous book, out by Faber and Faber. It's one of my favorite books, and in his book, it's basically it's about a man who's lost his wife and the grief of that, and his two sons, and a crow comes to visit the house, and the crow kind of helps them process the grief. So mine is that's kind of the format in the sense that, well, it's about a man in his 60s, and in his case he thinks there's jackdaws talking to him. Now I use the Irish word for jackdaws, which is cog. So it's got Irish in it, and it's got a bit of mythology in it, and it's this man's story. But he's a man-child, so it's sad, but it's told in a kind of a funny kind of a way, and there's kind of an innocence to his voice in it, and it's just, yeah, I think it's my best work today. It's definitely my favorite. So as I said, I'm not sure yet what I'm going to do with it, but it's there and it's written. And so I'm so he's just a gorgeous character. The guy,
I'm just reading up on this now to speak. Actually, it does sound a fascinating book. Certainly, I'm going to certainly. I think I'll have to order this afterwards. So, so we might compare notes on that in the future. I'm definitely for that one. So that sounds excellent idea. So straight away now, if people want to find out more about you, to conclude, where are the best going?
I'm all over the place, Andy.
I can tell.
But to be more specific, okay. So my website is annewdonnelly.com. So that's ANNEWDONNELLY.com. That's my website, and of course I'm on Twitter as well, and Anne W Donnelly, and Facebook Anne Walsh Donnelly. So. If you Google me, I've done that thing where you Google yourself to see how wonderful you are.
Oh yeah,
and I'm completely there. I'm all over the place.
Now I have found poems out there. I have found the pre-order. Obviously, time this podcast goes live, the order.
Oh yes,
you can. Your new book. Yeah, I found that on Amazon, so I presume it's on all good. I always say good and evil booksellers.
Yeah, Book Depository, Amazon, Fly on the Wall, obviously as well. Fly on the Wall, my publishers. Website as well, obviously, and my own. So it's it's kind of easy enough to find me.
Brilliant. Okay, then we'll wrap up this bit now, Anne, and let you get composed. And you're going to do a few poems in a minute or two. Hang around, everybody. Thank you again for this, Anne. It's been a pleasure today. I've really enjoyed this. So we'll see you in a minute.
Spoken Label.
Hi guys. Okie dokie. Straight over to Anne. She's going to do a selection of poems for us. Over to you, Anne.
Great, thanks, Andy. Okay, so I'm going to read poems from the new collection coming out in May, Odd as f***ck. And the first poem I want to read, it's actually, we're talking about my daughter Hannah earlier, and this poem is for Hannah, and it's called "How Did You Know?" And this poem came about because I went through a very dark period in 2016. I was quite depressed, and I had some suicidal thoughts. Hope doesn't trigger anybody, but anyway, so it was the love for my kids that kept me alive, basically. And one day, she actually said to me, she's about 12 at the time, and she just said to me, "Ma'am, my life would be screwed if he died." So, and it really hit home. So this poem I've written for Hannah because it's she's one of the reasons why I'm still alive, basically. So it's called "How Did You Know?" Ma'am, don't die on me while I'm gone. Your words, octopus tentacles that twist around my neural pathways. Your father revs his van in the driveway. I wave goodbye, shut the front door, slump to the hall floor. Octopus releases its ink black cloud, blinds and chokes. Dark waters beckon. I finger the note in my pocket, dream of days I could swim with eels, lounge on a lake's bed, and gaze up at Earth's ever-changing sky, no longer susceptible to its moods. More of your words surface. Ma'am, my life would be screwed if you died. I haul myself to the bathroom, shower my body, cry myself dry, watch fire flames curl my note. How did you know I loved you too much to screw up your life again?
Brilliant. Wow. Wow. But that must have made Hannah cry when she heard that one for the first time. It didn't all lump to my throat then.
Yeah, I actually read that the first time she heard it was at one of the first public readings I gave. And I think it has touched her, obviously, you know. Possibly will touch her more as she gets older. You know, I would say so, rather than now. But the next one is I'm going to lighten the mood a bit now after that, because you need
possibly
just a tad. This one is I really enjoyed writing this poem. It's one of those poems that just came out on the page without very little effort, and it's called My Menopausal Vagina. So yeah, I'm at that stage in my life, and this is just pure being funny, and kind of, it's like, you know, because like there is this thing, like when you get to a certain age in life, especially for a woman, like, you know, in your 50s, well, you know, it's all downhill from here on, and you know, you retire now and you don't have fun anymore, and you know, so, and apparently menopausal women don't like sex. Well, that's kind of what we're told. It's not true. But anyway, so this is where this poem came out of. It's called My Menopausal Vagina. My menopausal vagina is the village's oldest pub. Doors wide open. She ignores medical experts who call closing time. She doesn't miss sex hormones that disappeared with dusk. She's still quite the capable host. Her parties never run dry. She doesn't feel like a forgotten World War I trench full of sludge. Prefers to think of herself as an estuary. Kayakers, windsurfers, and paddlers still want to explore. She delights in their enjoyment of her brackish water that leaves a salty taste on the tongue. My vagina is not a posy that will welcome a man's nose. She's ragweed, not easy to contain, liable to poison mules and asses, stupid enough to wander into her pasture for a munch, ignoring the women-only sign she has erected at her entrance.
Yeah, as I tell Amanda and I over our frequently, those sort of pieces I'm not really aimed at my market, but I think that's fantastic. That complete contrast first piece. thumbs up, definitely, right? Yeah. So brilliant. No, it's always, I'm always a firm believer you do little sets. It's always great if you can have varying pieces, and that those two pieces is like a boxing ring, complete different sides. I love it.
Yeah, that's the great thing about this book is coming out, that it is like there's just such, you know, there's a huge contrast in style and themes in it, because, you know, I wanted to have the light as well as the dark. You know.
Oh God, yeah, you certainly do with that one. Really, definitely that.
Yeah.
So, right, let's see what we do next then.
So stop. This is kind of, I suppose it's kind of funny too. Well, I think it is, but anyway, and it's on the same theme of aging, because I'm aging. Well, we all are aging, but I'm in my early 50s still. But yeah, so it's that whole thing about at this stage in life, sometimes you've got loads of energy and you want to do loads of stuff, and then sometimes you just have no energy, you just want to lie down on the couch and not get up again. So that's where this poem came out of. So it's called Lioness or Labrador. Sometimes all I want is to be a lioness, pounce on my lover, tear at her clothes as if pulling flesh from the carcass of a fawn, roar myself hoarse while we wrestle to be on top, and after, coated in jungle sweat, lick my lips. Sometimes all I want to be is a Labrador, lie beside the stove, feel hands stroke my fur, watch lazily when a mouse sneaks into the kitchen, stops in the middle of the room, looks at me watching him, nibbles at a crumb under the table, and waltzes out the patio door.
Really? Again, no. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
I got the plot. I love the playfulness in that. And the title's fantastic.
Yeah.
Lioness or Labrador, because that's, again, just two complete wild opposites. No, it's brilliant. I've really enjoyed that.
That's the kind of, you know, you can be full of sexual energy 1 minute and then the next minute you're like, oh.
Yeah, I'm 49 in a couple of weeks' time, so I know exactly what you mean there. Like, it was some days I just can't even get out of bed, literally. Okay,
so I'm just wondering what else to read now, to be honest. Maybe I'll read one of the ones, one of the poems that I have about where there's an animal talking to me, because it's a funny one again. So
brilliant.
I think I'll read one of those. And this one is actually I don't know if you know Martina Evans. She's an Irish poet. Wonderful.
I've heard the name. Yeah.
Oh, she's a new book out now called American Mules, which I just got, and it's fabulous. But I love her stuff. But she wrote a poem about where her cat talks to her, and so that inspired 10 poems that are in this collection. Her poem about the cat. So in this poem I want to read, it's where I imagine a mouse in my daughter's bedroom is talking to me. Okay, so it's called Mouse, but it's the day the mouse in my daughter's bedroom talked to me. There's no mouse in her bedroom as far as I know. I hope to God there's not anyway, but it's, pure fiction. Anyway, here we go. So Mouse. Do you have any idea what a fabulous daughter you have? Said the mouse as I waded through the mound of clothes on the bedroom floor. I don't know why you're always giving out to her for leaving half-full mugs of hot chocolate on her dressing table. I'm rather partial to a sip of cold, hot chocolate. And we do a fine feast on the scraps of blueberry muffins. Though we might be getting a bit plump from all the sugar. I was only saying to the wife the other day that she might have to go on a diet. But she'll get great entertainment watching her do her makeup. Do you realise what a talented artist she is? All you seem to do is give out about the dirty towels and makeup pads she leaves in the bathroom. Though I could make your hair stand on end if I told you about the hour-long conversation she has FaceTiming her pals. Ah, no, couldn't do that to her, and you're better off not knowing anyway. But tell me, who's this Shane lad? He seems to be popping up on her Snapchat a lot lately. Sent her 10 heart emojis yesterday. And that wasn't lipstick that was on her neck after the disco last Friday night. I'm going to town to get a mousetrap later, I said. Ah, you wouldn't want to do that to the poor bucks, Willie. That'd break her heart altogether. So, yeah.
Oh, I love the playfulness of your words there. That's just so playful.
Yeah, Hannah loved that one. She's like, she read it, she's like, eyes up to heaven, like, oh, man.
Well, it's a big help for you, definitely, if your daughter actually liking them. Like, it was my philosophy. If you've been cringing under the bed, it might be time to look at everything in a different direction.
Well, she said to me recently one day, she said, Ma'am, you said, you're not your normal, basic, bog standard mother, and you're definitely not like any of my friends' mothers.
No, you sound like you was definitely one off.
It's a compliment, Hannah.
She loves you for it as well, no doubt as well. It makes it more fun, that definitely.
I'd say she does. She wouldn't admit that, but I'd say she does.
Oh yeah, well,
I'll
age
read
is.
one more. I'll read
Yeah,
one more.
please, yeah, please, love one more. Yeah.
This is the last poem in the collection, and it was inspired by Emily Dickinson. Has a lovely poem called "Hope is a Thing with Feathers," and a lovely, gorgeous poem. And it was that inspired this poem, and it's an uplifting poem. And I wrote it, trying to remember now when I wrote it, but I remember when I wrote it, I was remembering back to when I left my marriage, and I can remember the particular day I left my marriage, that our home and whatever else. And what was in my mind the whole time was enough is enough. In other words, that it had come to the stage in a marriage where I just couldn't take anymore, and it was that line, enough is enough. So I wrote this poem about that journey, that there comes a time when you have to make a choice. Are you going to stay in a toxic situation, or are you just going to go and whatever affect the consequences, just go and hope, grasp hope and hope that you will survive and that you'll thrive. So anyway, this is a very long-winded introduction to this poem, but anyway, it's called Signet, and it's about grasping hope. So here it is, Signet. Listen to your signet whisper, enough is enough. Grasp Emily's hope with feathers. Wade through the wooded swamp, knee-deep in dank muck. Grab a downy birch branch and rise. Cut the curly-leaved waterweed that litters your Sion lake, threatening to pull you under. Skitter along the lake's surface until you have enough speed to lift your feet. Then soar.
Fantastic. Great. It's always a great way of finishing off that. It's a really good piece to finish off with. It's like you change gears again then. That's brilliant. It's been a fantastic session. I've really, really enjoyed this today, Anne. Thank you very much for this.
Me too. Loved it.
Yeah, it's been great fun. So definitely we'll get you on board again for you. Hopefully when this new book comes out in a couple of years' time, then definitely so. I'm up for that one, so straight away. So, well, anyway, hang around. I need to speak to you off mic anyway. So, well, thank you again for today. It's been a pleasure. Really has been. So,
thanks, Andy.
As Don Callis at Impact Wrestling says everybody, stay safe and stay over, and we'll see you all soon.
Spoken Label.